pleasant day to each and everyone, especially to our beloved instructor and to my classmates. Once again, a pleasant day to all of you. So, in this video I'm tasked to discuss a topic from Group 1, which is entitled Introduction to Food Microbiology. So without further ado, let's now start the video. So before anything else, I would like to share with you the table of contents for this topic, in which it guides us for the coverage of this discussion. So in this lesson we will go to the objectives for this discussion, then the introduction, the science of microbiology, then the food microbiology, its origin and scope, then the importance of microorganisms in food, and then we will also tackle about the classification and nomenclature of microorganisms together with the microorganisms in food, in which we tackle about the bacteria, molds, yeast, viruses, parasitic organism, and also the importance of microorganisms in foods, and last is the normal microflora of some common foods. So now, here are the objectives for this discussion. So after discussing the unit we shall be able to explain the applied aspects of microbiology, then comprehend the need and scope of food microbiology, then enumerate the important genera of microorganisms associated with food, and lastly is specify normal microflora of some common foods. So this is the introduction of the topic. So we all know that microorganisms are living entities that has microscopic sizes, in which it includes bacteria, viruses, yeast, molds or fungi, algae, and protozoa. In addition to that, bacteria are classified as prokaryotics, so meaning to say that they have cells without definite nuclei. On the other hand, the fungi, algae, and protozoa are also classified as eukaryotics, or they have cells with nuclei. However, viruses do not have regular cell structure and are classified separately. Microorganisms, on the other hand, are present everywhere on Earth, which includes humans, animals, plants, and other living creatures. They also exist in soil, water, and atmosphere, and they can multiply everywhere except in the atmosphere. Together, their numbers far exceed all other living cells on this planet. They were the first living cells to inhabit the Earth over 3 billion years ago, and since then, they have played important roles, many of which are beneficial to other living systems. Among the microorganisms, some molds, yeast, bacteria, and viruses have both desirable and undesirable roles in our food. In this unit, the scope of food microbiology, the importance of microbes in food, and predominant microorganisms associated with food will be discussed. So, at this point, we are now in the science of microbiology. But before that, let us first define what is microbiology means. Microbiology is a branch of biological sciences that deals with microorganisms, which includes bacteria, fungi, some algae, protozoa, viruses, virions, and prions. Most microorganisms have the following characteristics. So for the first characteristic that you can see in the PowerPoint presentation is that they are generally too small to be seen with an unaided human eye, and some form of microscopy is required for the study for their structure. Second characteristic is that their cells or other structures are relatively simple and less specialized than those of higher plants and animals. And last character is that they are handled and cultured in the laboratory in ways that they are generally quite similar. In addition, microbiology has also developed into a science that can be studied from several perspectives. A specialist study can be made of each of an individual's group, giving rise to the following disciplines. So these disciplines includes first, bacteriology, or the study of bacteria. Second is mycology, or the study of fungi. Then protozoology, or the study of protozoa. Then phycology or alcology, or the study of algae. And lastly is virology, or the study of virus. Furthermore, microorganisms can also be studied from the applied viewpoint. Example, the relationship between microorganisms and the environment and the human activity. This again gives rise to a number of areas of specialist study, namely, so first is the medical microbiology, which includes some aspects of pathology or the study of diseases, immunology or how the immune system operates to prevent invasion by microorganisms, and epidemiology or how diseases are distributed and spread. Then agricultural microbiology, which is a study of microorganisms for plants, health, and related areas. Then industrial microbiology or biotechnology, or the study of the use of microorganism in large-scale industrial processes. And lastly is the food microbiology, which is the study of the role that the microorganisms play in food spoilage, food production, food preservation, and food-borne disease. So that is all about the science of microbiology. So at this juncture, let's now move on in the food microbiology, its origin and scope. So the processes of food spoilage and methods of food preservation and food fermentation have been recognized since ancient times. It was not until the 1800s that a relationship between foods and microorganisms was established. In 1837, Swan proposed that the yeast which appeared during alcoholic fermentation was a microscopic plant. And between 1857 and 1876, Pasteur showed that microorganisms were responsible for the chemical changes that takes place in foods and beverages. Their observations lead to the foundation for the development of food microbiology as we know today. Soon after these early discoveries were made, knowledge about the role that the microorganisms play in food preservation, food spoilage, and food poisoning accelerated rapidly until food microbiology gradually emerged as a discipline on its own right. Food microbiology is now a highly developed area of knowledge with the main areas of interest highlighted in the figure as you can see. Now, let's move on into the importance of microorganisms in foods. So since 1900s, our understanding of the importance of microorganisms in food has increased greatly. Their role in food can be either desirable or undesirable, which is briefly explained or discussed here. So first, let's tackle about in food-borne diseases. Many pathogenic microorganisms can contaminate foods during various stages of their handling. Between production and consumption, consumption of this food can cause food-borne diseases. And for some information, food-borne diseases can be fatal and may also cause a large economic losses. Furthermore, foods of animal origin are associated with more food-borne diseases than foods of plant origin. Also, mass production of food, introduction of new technologies in the processing and storage of food, changes in food consumption patterns, and increased import of food from other countries have increased the chances of large outbreak, as well as the introduction of new pathogens. And that is why effective intervention technologies are being developed and implemented to ensure the safety of consumers against the foodborne diseases. New methods are also being developed to effectively and rapidly identify the pathogens in contaminated foods. Next is the food spoilage. Except for cereal foods, all foods harbor microorganisms. Food spoilage stems from the growth of the microorganisms in food, or is due to the action of microbial enzymes. New marketing trends, consumer desire for foods that are not properly processed and preserved, extended shelf life, and changes of temperature abuse between production and consumption of foods have greatly increased the chances of food spoilage. And in some instances, with new types of microorganisms, the major concerns are the economic loss and wastage of food. New concepts are being studied to reduce contamination as well as control the growth of spoilage microbes in food. In addition to that is the food bioprocessing. Many food-grade microorganisms are used to produce different types of fermented foods using raw materials from animals and plant sources. Consumption of these foods has increased greatly over the last 15 to 20 years and is expected to increase further in the future. There have been great changes in the production and availability of these microorganisms to meet the large demand. Then, the food additives. Microbial enzymes are also being used to produce food and food additives. By employing genetic recombination techniques and using diverse microbial sources, enzymes of higher purity and activity are obtained. Many types of additives from microbial sources are being developed and used in food. Some of these include single-cell proteins, essential amino acids, color compounds, flavor compounds, stabilizer, and organic acids. Then, food biopreservation. Antimicrobial metabolites of desirable microorganisms are being developed and used in foods in place of preservative of non-food origin to control pathogenic and spoilage microorganisms in food. economic production of these antimicrobial compounds and their effectiveness in food systems have generated wide interest. The last importance of microorganisms in food is the probiotics. Consumption of foods containing live cells of bacteria and that have apparent health benefits has generated interest among consumers. The role of this bacteria for health and bacterial efficacy benefits is being critically investigated. So, at this point, we are done discussing the importance of microorganisms in food. Now, let's proceed to classification and nomenclature of microorganisms. Living cellular organisms on the basis of phylogenetic and evolutionary relationships are grouped into 5 kingdoms, in which bacteria belong to prokaryote before nucleus, while the eukaryotic with nucleus, molds, and yeast are grouped under fungi. On the other hand, viruses are not considered as living cells and are not included in this classification system. In addition to that, the classification, nomenclature, and identification of microbes is called taxonomy, in which it includes algae, protozoa, slime, molds, fungi, bacteria, archaea, and viruses. Most importantly, remember that naming of organisms by genus and species is governed by an international code. So now, let's proceed with the microorganisms in food. The microorganisms most common to food are bacteria and fungi. The fungi, which are less common than bacteria, consist of 2 major types of microorganisms, namely the molds and the yeast. Apart from this, food may contain viruses and other parasites such as protozoans, worms, and many more. So now, let us understand together the different microorganisms in food. So first is the bacteria. Bacteria produce various pigments which range from shades of yellow to dark pigments as brown or black. Certain bacteria have pigmentation of intermediate colors such as red, pink, orange, blue, green, or purple. These bacteria can cause food discoloration, especially among foods with unstable color pigments such as meat. Some bacteria also cause discoloration by slime formation. Next is the molds. Molds are multicellular microorganisms with mycelial or filamentous morphology. These microbes are also characterized by their display of variety of colors and are generally recognized by their mildewy or fuzzy, cotton-like appearance. Molds can develop numerous tiny spores that are found in the air and can be spread by air currents. These spores can produce a new mold's growth if they are transferred to a location that has conditions conducive to germination. Then, the yeast. Yeast are generally unicellular and differ from bacteria in their large cell size and morphology, and because they produce buds during the process of reproduction by division. Like molds, yeast can be spread through the air or other means and alight on the surface of foodstuffs. Yeast colonies are generally moist or slimy in appearance and creamy white color, and food that is highly contaminated with yeast will frequently have a slightly fruity odor. Then, the virus. Viruses are 10 to 450 mm in size, and they cannot reproduce without leaving a host. They attack only on susceptible host cell lines, infect plants, animals, and bacteria, and have the capacity to produce specific diseases in specific hosts. Transmission occurs in foods, water, and air. Viruses that can infect bacteria are called bacteriophages. In addition, viruses are included in the order of Viralis. Also, viruses are too small to be visualized with an ordinary compound microscope. The last microorganisms in food is the parasitic organism. A number of parasitic worms can also be transmitted by food to cause diseases in humans. Examples of parasitic organisms are the following. First is cystodes. Cystodes are flatworms that inhabit the intestinal tract, heart, and lungs of animals. Then, the trematodes. Trematodes are non-segmented flatworms that possesses a mouth and oral sucker that depends on a snail as an intermediate host before infecting humans by being indigested in drinking water or aquatic plants. Next parasitic organism is nematodes. Nematodes, or true roundworms, also can be transmitted from animals to humans. The last but not the least is the protozoa. Protozoa are microscopic single-celled animals which can be taken in with food or water to cause human illness. So, at this juncture we already know the different microorganisms in food, and now let us understand together their importance as well. So let's start with the molds. So molds are important in food because they can grow in conditions in which many bacteria cannot, such as low pH, low water activity, and high osmic pressure. In short, they are important spoilage microorganisms. So next is yeast. Yeast are important in food due to their ability to cause spoilage. Many are also used in food bioprocessing, and some are used to produce food additives. So now, let's move on into the virus. Viruses are important in food for three reasons. Some are able to cause enteric disease and thus, if present in a food, and can cause food-borne diseases. Some bacterial viruses or bacteriophages are used in the identification of species or strains by a process called transaction. And finally, some bacteriophages can be very important due to their ability to cause fermentation failure. So now, let's talk about the common bacterial groups in food. Among the microorganisms found in food, bacteria constitutes a major important group. So the last but not the least is let's talk about the normal microflora of some common foods. Under normal condition, a food generally harbors only a few types of microorganisms. They also constitute those that are naturally present in raw foods, and those that get in from outside sources to which the foods are exposed from the time of production until the consumption. The predominant type will be the ones for which the opportunity growth condition is present. The normal microflora of different food groups are also listed here. So, at this point we already discussed all the necessary information about the introduction to food microbiology. But before we end this discussion, I would like to share with you this quotation by Mike Johans, which states that food safety involves everybody in the food chain. Because in the real world of the industry, if there is one mistake in your safety procedures when preparing food, is that you are not the only one that is being affected, but the whole company itself, together with the complaint of your customers. That is why having a food safety procedures is necessary to have a healthy food that we serve to our customers to create customer satisfaction that leads to customer loyalty. Not only that, but also to avoid lost profit of your company or business, and also to avoid to ruin the name of the company or to ruin the reputation of your company. So that would be all for this video. Thank you for listening and watching my video. I hope that you enjoy and you learn from it. Bye-bye!